Good morning, students. Open page number 14 of your history textbook, chapter number 4, Maharashtra before the times of Shivaji Maharaj. In this chapter, we are going to study about the situation that existed in Maharashtra before the times of Shivaji Maharaj. At the beginning of the 17th century CE, most of the territory in Maharashtra was under the control of the Nizam Shah of Ahmednagar and Adil Shah of Bijapur. So, before Shivaji Maharaj established his control in Maharashtra, the rulers who ruled in Maharashtra were Nizam Shah of Ahmednagar and Adil Shah of Bijapur. The Mughals had entered Khandesh. Their objective was to expand their power in the south. There were settlements of Siddhi peoples who had come from Africa along the coastline of Konkan. The competition and conflict amongst the Portuguese, the British, the French, and the Dutch who had come from Europe was also getting intense during this period. So, during this period, not only Nizam Shah of Ahmednagar and Adil Shah of Bijapur were ruling in Maharashtra, but there were the Siddhis power also, which was ruling along the coastline of Konkan. Besides this, there were the Portuguese, the British, the French, and the Dutch who had come from Europe, and they were also trying to establish their domination in Maharashtra. There was stiff competition amongst them to capture the markets for trade. The Portuguese had already established their rule in Goa and Vasai on the western coastline. The British, the Dutch, and the French had found an entry through the medium of trading companies by setting up factories. So, the British, Dutch, and French had established their domination in the Indian market in Maharashtra by setting up factories. All these powers assess the strength of other powers, kept themselves safe, and tried to dominate as much as possible. So there was stiff competition and conflict existing among these powers. These conflicts had created instability and insecurity in Maharashtra. These different people from Europe were called as Stopkar on the basis of their customary headgear. Customary means usual, and headgear means hat, cap, or helmet. So these people, different people coming from Europe, that is the Dutch, the Portuguese, the British, the French, wore different types of hat, cap, or helmet, and on the basis of the differences in their headgear, these people were called as Stopgar. Now we are going to study here about concepts of Paragna, Kasba, and Mauja. It is necessary to get acquainted with the village, that is Mauja, Kasba, and Paragna to understand the nature of settlements in that period, as also of the officers that formed a link between the rulers and their subjects, and also the markets and their craftsmen. Paragna was made up of many villages. So many small villages means many mojas come together and form a paragna. Generally, the headquarters of a paragna was called as kasbah. A village smaller than a kasbah was called as moja. So moja is the smallest part of the village. Let us get acquainted in brief with village, kasbah, and paragna respectively. Village. The other name for village is Mauja. Most of the people lived in villages. A village was also called as Mauja. The chief of the village was called as Patil. He used to try to bring maximum land under cultivation. When there was any dispute in the village, the Patil resolved it and made peace. So the head of the village was Patil, and it was the responsibility of the Patil to solve any conflicts or disputes in the village and bring peace and order in the society in the village. A Kulkarni helped the Patil in his work. The Kulkarni kept the record of the revenue that was collected. There were various artisans in the village. They had hereditary rights regarding their occupations. Hereditary rights means rights that they get by inheritance. Means if the parents are involved in pottery work, then their children also will be involved in the same work. They get this right by way of inheritance. So there were various artisans in the village, and all of them followed this right of inheritance. The peasants gave a share of the agricultural produce to the artisans for the services they rendered to the village community. This share was known as baluta. So at that time the concept of money didn't existed, and so there was a barter system of exchange. where the peasants would give a part of the agricultural produce to the artisans, and in return, the artisans would provide them with the services that they are rendering. So, this share was known as Baluta. Second concept is Kasbah. A Kasbah was like a big village. It was usually the headquarters of a Paragna. Paragna means a group of villages, and Kasbah is a headquarter of the Paragna. Example, Indapur Kasbah of Indapur Paragna, Vai Kasbah of Vai Paragna were the headquarters of those Paragnas. Agriculture was the main occupation. There were skilled artisans like carpenters, blacksmiths, etc. in a Kasbah. There were usually a market adjacent to a Kasbah. Adjacent means near to the Kasbah there was a market where the villagers used to come to sell their products. The Sethe and Mahajan were the Vatandars of the Peth. Every village did not necessarily have a Peth. Peth means market, and the Shethe and Mahajan were the Vatandas of the Peth. The setting up of a Peth was a job of the Sethes and the Mahajans. So it was the responsibility of the Sethes and the Mahajans to set up these markets. For that, they received some land from the government and some rights from the villagers. So, for the services that these Sheths and Mahajans were providing to the people of the village, they used to receive some land from the government and some rights from the villagers. The Mahajan maintained the accounts of the Peth. Pargana. Many villages together made a paragna, but the number of villages was not the same in all paragnas. For example, the Pune paragna was a big paragna. It consisted of 290 villages. Paragna means many villages come together and form a paragna. So, in the Pune paragna, there were 290 villages. It was a big paragna. There were 64 villages in the Chakhan Paragna. The Shirwal Paragna was small, it had only 40 villages. The Deshmukh and the Deshpandes were the Vatandas officers of the Paragna. So the responsibility of maintaining peace and order in these Paragnas were entitled to Deshmukhs and Deshpandes. The Deshmukh was the chief of the Patils in a Paragna. The Deshmukh did at the Paragna level what the Patil did at the village level. So Patil was given the responsibility of one village, but Deshmukh was given the responsibility of the entire village, entire Paragna. The Deshpande was the chief of all Kulkarnis in the Paragna. So Deshmukh was the chief of all the Patils and Deshpande was the chief of all the Kulkarnis in the Paragna. The Deshpande did at the Paragna level the work that Kulkarnis did at the village level. These Vatandar officers were the link between the people and the government. They were link between the people and the government means whatever her problems this people used to face in the Paragna was discussed by the Vatandas, by these Kulkarnis and by these Deshpandes and Deshmukhs with the government. In case of enemy invasion or drought, these Vatandars represented the grievances of the people to the government. In case of any enemy attack or in case of drought or any other problems that was faced by the people, all these problems were reported to the government by these Vatandars. Sometimes these officers misused their powers. They collected more money from the people than was due or did not remit the money so collected to the government. At times, these officers also used to misuse their powers. They collected more money that was due, and at many occasions they even did not submit the money collected from the people to the government. On such occasions, the people suffered harassment. So, on such occasions, the people had to suffer a great torture from this Vatandars. The calamity of a famine. Agriculture was dependent on rain water. If it did not rain, crops would fail. The prices of food grains rose. It became difficult for the people to get food grains and other things. So in the conditions of drought, there is scarcity of food grains because crops fail because it doesn't rain. There was no fodder for the cattle. Even for food for cattle is not available. Water became scarce. It became difficult for the people to live in the village. They were forced to leave the village. A famine was a great calamity for the people. A famine was a great calamity. Calamity means a sudden disastrous event where there is severe shortage of food. A great famine occurred in Maharashtra in 1630 CE. People were greatly distressed due to this famine. It has been described in these words: people were ready to sell themselves for a piece of bhakri, but no, there was nobody to buy them. What does this mean? That people were ready to sell themselves for a piece of bhakri. There was so much shortage of food that people were ready to become slaves. They were ready to give themselves completely and work under the powers of rich people, but still there was nobody to buy them. There was a severe scarcity of food grains. Entire families were destroyed. Cattle and farm animals died. Agriculture was devastated. The famine put an end to industries. So, because of famine, there was even an end to the growth of industries. All financial transactions came to a standstill. People had to wander to far away regions in search of a livelihood. So, in search of livelihood, in search of food, people left their villages and went away to far away regions. It was a great challenge to bring back to normalcy the devastated life of the people. The people's life was greatly destroyed because of this famine, and it was very difficult to bring the life of the people to normalcy. The work of the Varkari movement. Society was greatly influenced by blind beliefs and rituals. People had become fatalistic and inert, means people blindly followed beliefs and rituals. They had lost all initiative. They didn't have the capacity, the power to take decisions. The condition of the common people was miserable. In such circumstances, the sons in Maharashtra endeavored to inspire the masses. So people was very much demotivated and very much discouraged. They had no interest in living their life with joy and pleasure. In such circumstances, in such situations, the sons of Maharashtra came forward and tried their best, tried hard to motivate the common people to live their life again with pleasure. In Maharashtra, the tradition of sons, which began with Sant Dhyaneshwar and Sant Namdev, was carried on by sons coming from various strata of the society. People from all strata of society were part of the Sant tradition. For example, Sant Choka Mela, Sant Goroba, Sant Sena, Sant Savata, Sant Narhari, Sant Sheikh Muhammad, etc. Sant Chokoba's wife, Sant Soirabai, and sister Sant Nirmalabai, Sant Muktabai, Sant Janabai, Sant Kanhopatra, Sant Bahinabai Shiurkar, and other women were also among them. So not only there were the Sant belonging to the masculine gender, but there were also women sons who came forward to motivate and inspire the masses. Pandarpur was at the center of the Sant movement. Vitthal was the object of their worship. On the banks of the river Chandrabhaga at Pandarpur, the sons and pilgrims used to rejoice in their devotion. So major this sant used to worship Lord Vithala on the banks of the river. They used to rejoice in their devotion. They used to show their bhakti, their creativity towards Lord Vitthal. Their equality was propagated through bhajans, kirtans, and unity meals. So, to express their bhakti, they used to sing bhajans, kirtans, and they used to held unity meals. We'll continue with the remaining part of the chapter in our next video. Till then, read the explained part of the chapter. Thank you.